Hey guys, it's been a while since I've made a video, so I thought I would address some of the things that I'm seeing currently. If you remember, I've mentioned quite a few times on videos the reason a group that I belong to, the Watchmen, was started was because people were worried about being harmed physically, and that's kind of why people joined together and was in such a flurry last year to get up with groups like Watchmen in order to be able to protect their communities and each other. And I've seen some videos and even reporting type services give descriptions of what the Watchmen are and what their their goals are, their ambition, whatever. One of the things I seen recently was that Watchmen target anti-racist groups. And right when I seen that, I was like, it's not that the anti-racist group would be targeted as much as that there's certain people within anti-racist groups that tend to cause trouble, that tend to hurt innocent people, that tend to tear stuff up. So that's not targeting the anti-racist group. It's targeting people who are being unfair and harmful to other people. That's the whole goal of Watchmen. And early on, I mentioned that we had to pay attention to political things, although at the time it was physical things that were happening. And something I mentioned several times was while we were paying a lot of attention to physical threat, the left was passing all sorts of bills and changing things in the government and the school systems in your communities under the radar, because most of us tend to vote people in, and some of us do a straight ticket, don't really pay attention to what's happening with that person, or don't even really know much about the person, which I think is starting to change. People are realizing, you can label yourself as Republican or even independent, unaffiliated, and not necessarily go along with the ideals of that party. So I think we're learning some things recently as communities that, who's in the school board matters, who's in your city council, that sort of thing. Who is it? What's their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they trying to spend all their time with special interest groups? That sort of thing. So it's encouraging to see so many people get involved on a political level that never have been involved. I think most of it just assume that as long as we pick a party line, that person is going to go what maybe a traditional way of doing things is, and that's just not always the case. But more than anything, I think most of you guys have seen. Let me highlight this as well, because Coca-Cola says that I need to try to be less white. Pepsi's just as good, if not better. Somebody telling me to be less white is about as offensive as you can get politically. Offensive not because it hurts feelings. I get offended by things being illogical, things being lopsided when it comes to views of people or things. Most conservatives are not shallow-minded enough to think that ideology and skin color are synonymous. An example would be Candace Owens and Lori Lightfoot, two black women. Their ideologies are complete opposite. Okay, so just because those two would go into a room together, they can't go, oh, look, there's another person like me, so I can go and join in and have some communion with them and have some security with them. Those two would probably, go at it. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, same skin color, completely opposite ideologies. So this is part of what I don't understand about people saying be less white. So they're not really talking about skin color, although they point backwards to a time where white people were racist, and that word racist meaning there was enough white people that were making policies that could oppress entire groups. That part, racism. That was happening, obviously, in the past. But that's what's being used today to say, okay, white people are still racist. It's because of a number. People are trying to say because there's so many of you guys, if you wanted to make oppressive policies, you could. But again, I'm not shallow enough, and if you just look back at world history will teach you people do not necessarily, especially in majority groups, combine together based on skin color. Um, Ideologies, culture is what binds people together. I would be proud to be with any race of person, male or female, and I'm talking about biological male or female, and that's a whole other thing. Biological male or female, um, be proud to stand by those people and help to fight for justice and liberty for each and all. Um, we're demonized. The left is using, this is the main reason I'm making this video. The left is demonizing white people, but what they're really demonizing is being conservative. Because conservatives would like to have smaller government, would like to have less centralized decision making, centralized control and power, more power and influence in our communities, and the people who live in those communities. People who live and work together, who tend to get along well and watch out for each other if you let them do that. But what the left has done is they've created the shared enemy. And this is something that's taught in school, even when you're talking about success. Companies use it. If you want to have a successful group, one of the main tenets you got to put in there is to find an enemy that you all can fight against as a team. So what the left has done was pick out past injustices that people who happen to be white dominantly had done. I mean, a long time ago. Pick that out, and they know that minorities would not want to associate with people who are being labeled racist. Why would minorities want to side with that? So now we have a common enemy for minorities and leftists. Leftists want bigger government. Conservatives tend to want smaller government. So the leftists are not necessarily looking out for racial justice, as they say. What they're looking out for is building numbers. And the common enemy being the white conservative. And as long as we can demonize that white conservative, and it's really all conservatives for that matter. Black conservatives are treated the exact same way. But it's primarily as a racial group. Conservatives, primarily, it's white. Although that number's changing, and I think there's quite a bit of minorities starting to see through some of the manipulation of the left. I imagine that it's difficult for any minority to side with, you see the word I'm even using, side with a group that's considered racist or oppressive. And you know that that group has done that in the past. I mean, I can even think about something like Scottish people versus English people. Would I want to side with English people who I know who have oppressed Scottish people in the past? I'd probably have to get through some hurdles right there just to understand that maybe they're in a different position today than they were in then. And two, usually when things are done, they're done through a few elites. And the rest of the people just kind of follow around. I mean, that's even how it's kind of done today. So I'm saying the left knows that about the history experience between black people and white people in America. And obviously, and I'll say again, if I, and all I can do is empathize to the point of experiences I've had, I've been discriminated against, so I understand that point. I haven't been dehumanized, and I think black people in this country have been dehumanized in the past. I don't see that at all now, and I'm a stereotypical Southerner. I don't see hardly anybody dehumanizing black people. And I know a lot of Southerners around my area, although lots of different cultures are coming into the South, so culture is shifted. But I'm saying that gulf that's there, that hurdle that's hard to get over for some, which is understandable. But the left's grabbed on and said, hey, these guys are supremacists. They're automatically trying to be racist. They're automatically racist because they're in large numbers so they can oppress. But again, you put me in a room with 10 white people, I'll probably go at it with 8 of them because my ideology is mine, it belongs to me, and is definitely not based on a skin color. I look at personal responsibility as a virtue. Helping people in need is a virtue. Having empathy where empathy is deserved. You can't give a hand up or a hand out to people who are not in need just based on a skin color. And that's starting to happen right now. There's plenty of wealthy black people in this country. I mean, tons of black people that's wealthy. If you look across the board at power systems, power structures, places of influence, there's many, many minorities in those positions. You look at police chiefs, you look at city councils, universities, instructors, professors, directors, deans, whatever. Lots of minorities in those places. And the government, plenty. The school system, though, is completely ran by leftists. Completely. So is the problem that there's minorities in places of power and influence? Absolutely not. The problem is that leftists are taking their ideology and they're promoting it as being the only one. So right now we have a government that's headed in that way of being all leftists. School system's already that. So in my opinion, what that is, not even that, just that. Law enforcement and military alike. I've been listening to law enforcement and military lately talking about the critical race theory and how we need to acknowledge white racism and acknowledge, things that have happened to minorities in this country. We already do that through history classes. We already know that happened. That's not the point. That's not even the focus. The focus is being on getting rid of conservatives. Up underneath all that, look into the manipulation because that's what's happening. The focus is really on conservatives. Conservatives don't have a voice. The reason they don't have a voice is because we're being shamed. Now, if you think about this, the tactic of getting the military on board with that, getting law enforcement on board with that, you're creating a culture that has a strong military that's one-sided in their political views. And it creates almost a two-part system going on there, where you have a people that's in control from the government side, from power, from authority, from influence. The rest of us are being censored and shamed. So we have no voice. And if we do have a voice, it's being shamed. So it's marginalized, it's demonized. Yet we're being taxed at our jobs to pay for the military to protect this country. We're being taxed for law enforcement to protect communities, yet some of those are being told to step down, that minorities, some, have a reason for being angry, and you should just kind of let them go and not think about property, not think about that as being irrelevant, or stand down and let them tear stuff up. This is kind of why the Watchmen started, because if police are going to be told to stand down, then you're forcing community members to step up. If that's what you want, that's what's happening, and that's what has happened already in lots of places. We also pay for public teachers to teach. We pay government employees to teach, yet our voice is not heard. And when it is heard, it's demonized. And we're told to shut up and be passive. And it's all based on, supposedly, that we're racists. Automatically racist, so we need to be marginalized, right? We need to be sit to the side and be quiet because our color, our skin color of people have done damage. As if no other skin color of people has done damage to another group. That's part of history, people. That's part of history. The thing about America, and I'm going back to this 4th of July thing in my mind because that's almost here. And that's being underrated, and it's being, especially with critical race theory, it's being ignored. What's being looked at is slavery and the idea of people seeking to have power over other people. 1776, if you think about 4th of July, what was happening at that point? Well, taxation without representation. The people here were not able to have a voice. They were not able to have power or influence over what the British government was doing. So, a large part of your Revolutionary War, which people tend to try to act like that's not the beginning of the country, the beginning of this country as a nation that seeks freedom and liberty and justice, it started right there. It wasn't perfect right there because the principles were not applied universally, but they came and they are continuing to grow into the right way, except for leftists keep trying to stick their foot in there and become the power source again. People did not want that big power structure with a government that wasn't listening to all sides, with a government that didn't include, at the time, people who were in America. That's what's happening right now. Same exact thing. People fought against having a large government that was in control of everything without really representing those people. I mean, think about that for a minute. Those people were willing to give their lives over changing what type of environment they were living in. The leftists are trying to create this thing back like older countries or other countries already do, which is having a gigantic government who's overbearing, over controlling, has one voice, one way of doing things, doesn't allow different opinions, and don't necessarily look to personal responsibility, ambition, family units, people's religion, being able to do it how they want to do it without forcing other ideas into that. Give people their freaking space. Let them have their spaces to do their things that belong to them. If you don't like to be part of that, then don't be part of it. You know, like if somebody don't want to make a cake for a homosexual couple, how is that the business of the government to step into that? I mean, why would the couple not just go somewhere else and get a cake made by somebody who wants to make a cake for them? What the heck is that about? I'm not suggesting anybody should be down on somebody. I'm not suggesting that. But, man, we got government stepping in places that don't belong. And the people during the Revolutionary War, they were being taxed. Their hard-earned money, they were being taxed. Yes, their hard-earned money. They also worked. You had elites that had a lot of things given to them. There's a crap load of people in this country who worked their butts off, worked hard in life, and didn't have everything handed to them. Caucasians and black as well. The stereotypes and the gross generalizations are hard to swallow. But right now, we're being taxed. And Coke, here you go again. Be a little less white, huh? I mean, again, that is the most shallowest thing ever that people could. Let me move over here to the manipulation part. So the 1776, people weren't being represented or their voices being heard, had no say in what was happening in their communities. That's part of what happened there. The part of what's happening here is the left is trying to use race or calling people supremacists or extremists. And they keep saying deadly insurrection. How many people were killed there? One of the people that were killed was shot by, a security inside of the Capitol. I mean, come on. I'm not saying it was right, what happened or how it happened. But I mean, the way that's being labeled, I mean, if I had never seen a video of it, I'd be shocked by the way it's being described by the left, because it's don't really go along with it. So manipulation. Everything conservative is being censored, and it's being demonized. So think about this. And how do I know about manipulation and what that looks like? I'm a former professional counselor. One thing I dealt with in family systems. Now, if you deal with it in a family system, and family members do it to each other, why would people in the country not do it to each other? They will. In a family system, you often have a person who's a manipulator. You see it at jobs all the time, too. You'll see somebody who is the nice guy or gal. They really come across like they want to help people. And then underneath, they got something else going on. Whatever they're doing creates some sort of an unfairness, or injustice toward other people, even if it's at a small degree. But what a manipulator does is come across in a way as being helpful. And other people see that they need to either go along or let's cater to this so we can make, let this person have their place, because they're lots of times you'll see them trying to get into a position of authority. That's what manipulators do. That's how they run things. They get more in a position of authority, and they create need. The manipulation is coming in by using false premises about conservatives and using false premises about, I don't even know how to use the terms together, because they're interchanging conservative and white. Yet leftists, a lot of them are white, and so I don't even know how to use the terms the way they're using them. Not because I'm a moron, it's because skin color is not an ideology. Skin color doesn't do anything but sit over across to your muscles and bones, I mean, come on. Ideology is what makes things different. So a manipulator, and I'm saying the left right now, especially extremist left, are manipulating society, especially minorities. They're manipulating people who are on the fence, because they're making people not want to associate with conservatives. And it's all just a way to distract from what their intention is. A manipulator has a goal. Lots of times it's power, even if it's just a sense of power. So people will actually harm other people in some way, or take from other people, just to have that status of authority or power or ego. That's human. But there's particular people who tend to try to manipulate to get their way into that. That's what the left is doing. They manipulate it in the school system. They manipulate minorities. They manipulate in the military now. All across, in every facet, they're manipulating to get power. The reason I call it manipulation is because the premises are false. They're calling all white people racist. Yes, if every white person decided they wanted to oppress people, that could happen. That's not going to happen. Why is it not going to happen? Half of us have different ideologies than the other. That's why. So the premise there that this is some kind of thing we need to be worried about, it's bullcrap. I can't get any examples from people over when minorities get attacked out on the street just by a random white guy. Or police, just random, let me go, shoot a black person. You hear the story or the narrative nonstop without specific examples. I keep hearing racist, but the definitions of them shift and change according to whatever somebody's trying to paint the picture as. If they want to paint it as systems, I mentioned earlier, look at the systems then. Every system in our country has minorities in positions of power. That's not a problem. I'm not saying it's a problem. If those systems were set up to where minorities could not be in them, then they wouldn't be in them. So this is a false premise. It paints a picture of an argument. Now you can make an argument true just by assuming your premises are true, and then your conclusion follows, and then that makes it a true argument. Well, the premises are false that the left is throwing out there. And they're basing all of it, usually on backstory, during a time period when the entire globe was accepting of stuff like slavery. I'm not saying slavery was just to humanity at all. What I'm saying is there was a time period for humanity that it was widely accepted and part of culture. That's shifted, that's changed. Good that it's changed. And people keep saying, well, we need to have a real conversation about racism. I'm having a real conversation about it right now. When is the left going to have a real conversation? Real meaning not just I'm going to open my mouth and tell you what I feel, but how about giving me some information that backs up what you're claiming? Because statistics don't show it. People around here, I know, don't show it. Now I've heard people use examples like, well, white people can get a job more than a black person, or a black business can't get as much business as a white business. It's got all to do with what people look like and how they present themselves. Not the skin color, it's how you come across. I mean, people are going to have to get with the personal responsibility thing. If you want somebody to see you as a professional, then come across as a professional. You'll likely get opportunity that way. That's just how that works. You can't look like a slob, and I'm not saying minorities look like slobs. I'm saying any person. You can't look like a slob and expect to get a job. So if you have been a black person who hasn't had business opportunity, how did you present yourself? Same with white people. I'm just saying it gets thrown around like that. That's how sometimes I've heard conversations from people that it goes there and it says, well, the person got the job because of their color. Maybe it was they came across more professional. It wasn't their color. It was how they came across, how they presented themselves, how they handled themselves. That's all. And I know people are going to pick up on words here and there that I say and are going to twist as far as they can twist it. I'm an imperfect person. I have biases. Everybody does. But as a culture, as an overall culture and country, our founding fathers attempted to lay out a foundation of, let's seek out moral principles, logical principles, get those in place, start there and function outward. The principles in our Constitution, again, are just. They wasn't applied universally in the beginning. So nobody has yet been able to tell me, well, your Constitution was created by racists. They were created by a people during a time, like I said, certain behavior patterns were acceptable during that time period that aren't acceptable now. We learn and grow from through time and ideas and listening, how things affect people. The stuff that we're hearing right now, people are saying that affect them, is a lot of us BS. I mean, you have millionaires talking about being oppressed. Millionaires. Even the worst off in this country who claims they have it bad are still better off than some other countries. That's why people are still trying to come into this country. Because even the lowest class in our country, who have it the worst, are still better off than people in some other countries. I mean, think about that. No, it's not perfect. But if we can't have representation for all people groups, and there's at least half of us, the left's trying to get rid of half of us being conservative by demonizing us. That's their method. That's manipulative. They're trying to get power. They're trying to do a power grab. Instead of shared power, shared responsibility, they're trying to do a power grab and make everybody do it their way. Collect money off of it, right? Collect money from the citizens and represent them or don't represent them, don't matter. They got a position of authority. Some of us for ego, some of us for money. That's just how that goes. Acknowledge it or not, it's money and ego. Power. And then there's people who would like the country to have shared power and find some kind of middle ground. Those are the people we need to try to pay attention to be in charge of things. Something that our group experienced, it wasn't necessarily power things in our group, but my idea behind it is the people of the group own it, and that the people of our group should spend time discussing how they want things done or not. I tried to venture out and do things a little bit different ways, and people, man, they clawed in there and changed stuff enough that they were trying to make everybody do it the same way. That works for some parts of it, but other parts not. I mean, where's your independence there? Where is your autonomy where it comes to, here's the personality of our group, what we're trying to do in our community, based on what our community needs are, because everybody's community has different needs. So again, the point here, so if we're going to have dignity for ourselves and for other people, we have to start questioning people's motive. So benefit of the doubt to people, maybe. As a former counselor, I can tell you that if people or a people group has an idea that they want to gain power for whatever their ideology is, and they want that to be the only thing, they're going to manipulate until they get it. And they're going to try to get alliances with people and create a common enemy. That way it makes their group and their alliances have a focus, an objective focus, a goal to get rid of something. Right now, that something is conservatives and then white conservatives. That's what they're trying to get rid of. So you have to ask why. Why would you want to get rid of that completely? Except for the one thing that stands in the way. We prefer a smaller government. We prefer that if there's two opposite views of how things should be done, we should find a middle ground for it as communities, not as the government's going to say, here's how it's done. You got people being called domestic terrorists now for saying make America great again. White supremacists for saying make America great again. People aren't saying make America a slave country. People aren't saying make America a place to marginalize other people. That's not what people mean by that. There was a sense that there was a time to where multiple views were starting to be allowed and accepted within society on a broad scale, which was nice. People not forcing other people to believe their way, people not forcing other people to do things their way. It was starting to happen and grow. That's what people mean by make America great again. Personal responsibility. People have to pay for things they do, the consequences of actions. Dialogue could happen, even in schools. Some dialogue, although the school system's kind of been under for quite a while. That's a place that dialogue needs to happen. But what's being taught, and they're starting it in the early school system, that white people are automatically racist. So what are they trying to root out right there? They want to make sure that white people feel ashamed of anything traditional. And conservatism has a traditional feel to it. It doesn't mean that every tenet of behavior from the past is in it, though. But the principles remain the same. It just has to be spread out evenly and done or applied evenly for it to have value. What the left's trying to introduce, get rid of conservatives. And they can start that because in the school system, for anybody who has conservative parents, well, now if I can get to these younger children, for one, they'll start challenging their parents and rejecting their parents. Be getting rid of that. Like even in the military, they're even targeting retiring military to teach them about how racist they are and to pay attention to other people's experiences. I've even heard where you can't understand because you haven't experienced. You know, I have eyeballs. And I also know that people can assume things that are not happening based on a narrative they've been told is happening. You know, I'm not saying it don't happen, but I'm saying you can't use that broad brush and say it's happening every time, just like people try to bring up the point of, oh, well, so-and-so, I go in this area and people are staring at me, or, you know, looking at me like, I tend to stare at people. I don't care who they are or what they are. I'm a people watcher, and I tend to have a look about me that's, you know, maybe that I'm questioning when I'm not questioning. That's how I look. It could be misunderstood. I could come across that way. I'm saying a lot of the stuff, why I'm putting in little pieces like that is because there's been so much talk on this racist thing, so much talk. And again, I'll ask for some specifics in your life as a minority. If any minority person is looking at this, if any liberal person is looking at this that buys into that America is racist systematically, systemically, where? If you do have minorities working in all of these positions, then how is it happening there? And the justice system, some of the pieces you're not putting in there is the different varieties of stuff like crack or cocaine when it comes to penalties. Why does one give more sentencing than the other? It's because of the consequences of it. One's a little more harsh than the other on what it makes people tend to do. It's not because during a time it was predominantly held by black people and cocaine predominantly held by, or powder cocaine predominantly held by white people. The behavior that came from people using crack exceeded what you seen people doing when they were doing powder. So there's factors in there that never get considered. That's in the justice system. I've seen also statistics of plenty of minorities being let out of jail early or being released really quick over some pretty severe crimes. So if that did happen in the past, it ain't happening now. Um, personal places that it happens. Sometimes it's the people staring at me thing. You can't make people like you, period, okay? This is going to have to be understood by all Americans. You don't have to like me, I don't have to like you. I don't have to look at you pleasantly, you don't have to look at me pleasantly. I mean, that's silly. That's not racism as much as maybe I look at you, maybe I think you look odd, maybe I think you look good. Maybe I'm intrigued by something. Whatever. The assumptions, though, why is it always it's racism? Why is it always that? The left is fueling that narrative, and they're censoring people who give you the real reason of what they're doing and what they stand for. We got no platform to talk about it, and hopefully that's going to change soon. This has been a long video. I'm getting up toward 40 minutes. I did type something out. I thought I was going to talk about that, but it kind of changed and shifted. I hope to address some things from here on out that have to do with community and just the way things are talked about and presented, and what's really happening. Question it. What is wrong with questioning it? You can question me. What's my motive? My motive here is to find balance. I already have a job, so it's not about me. I'm older. I'm not worried about finding opportunities. I am worried about being targeted for some BS reasons, though. But I think about generations after me. What's it going to look like? Is it going to be resorted back to a type of culture and country people are trying to leave? You'll have your one leftist ideology. Or will people have balance? Will people be able to be individuals? Communities be able to be communities and live and function together without the big iron fist of the government on top of them telling them how and when and what they got to do about everything. My hope with the Watchmen group early on was to protect each other physically from not anti-racist groups, from people who want to harm other people for no other reason, or from them being ignorant on what they're fighting against. Because some of you done got this demon in your head that the left planted there. They gave you a villain that you can go attack. If you're going to be mad, you can be mad at this. And they've highlighted especially white conservatives. And that's going to go to an ugly place at some point. Because there's too many people that's not going to put up with that by the time you get to their area. That's just a fact. I hope it don't go towards something like that. And especially even that's my notion of why they're even trying to do this with the military and law enforcement. If you could get that kind of power behind you as a political movement, then you control everything. That's just how it is. That's why Biden made his little. You'd have to have F-15 nuclear bombs if you're going to take on the government. Well, the notion is that at least half of us believe one way and half might believe the other way. It'd be hard to get the military involved because there's such a divide there. Because military would be representative of your public as well. So would law enforcement. But do we value life and people's property that they own, that they worked for? We value those things. So my hope, watchman groups, or even if you don't call yourself a watchman group, what the task of a watchman is to warn people of danger. And part of the groups, any that's organized, is to protect each other physically. But to bring people in and say, hey, watch out for this, because this is what's happening. Question people's motives, question what they're doing, and look for facts, real facts, not something somebody throws out of their mouth, but back it up with a few resources to find out if what you're looking at is true or not. I've seen some things lately that's really disturbing when it comes to the racial thing. Of people saying, "Oh, I can't go into a national park. I don't see people like me. I feel like an outsider." Like I mentioned earlier, Candace Owens, Lori Lightfoot, they run into each other in the national park, there's not going to be much comfort in that, okay? They're both black, but I doubt there's going to be much comfort in it. I don't understand. I guess as a person who belongs to a racial group, this is one thing I could say is separate. I don't have a notion of looking at race because I don't believe that there's enough of us that have one ideology that's the same. I don't want us all to have that. I don't care. Half white people can go over and have their own ideology. That's fine with me. Just don't be trying to overpower me with yours. I'm not going to try to overpower you with mine. Another, disturbing thing. I think it was Lightfoot said that. I'm not going to talk to white reporters. There's overrepresentation of white people don't need to be in this discussion. White people need to sit down and shut up, as if policies are not going to affect white people. Okay? And are you saying that white people can't possibly come up with something that might be useful in society as an idea? Ideas built off of ideas. Ideas built off of this experience and that experience. Taking them both into consideration, taking it all into consideration, trying to find a middle ground. If you keep trying to put it over there to one spot, whether it be all black voice or all liberal voice, you're putting this into a place that, like I said a minute ago, taxation without representation. At some point, you're going to have to understand people are not going to fund or put up with their money being taken from them from a group of people who don't represent them at all and will not try to find a middle ground at all. That's not going to keep working that way. So, appreciate any of you guys who've taken the time to listen to this. I haven't made a video in a while because there's so much to talk about. I really didn't know where to focus. So much to talk about. I just hope that people are aware of what it is that we have and have had to a degree in this country. And it can either go in a positive or a negative way. Half of the people might get what they want. Half of the people will get their power and ego trip. And then the other half stepped on, forgotten about, marginalized, minimalized, demonized. Just existing in somebody else's world, paying taxes so they can have money to do whatever they want to do with it. That's not the type of thing that the people over the past generations have fought for. It's a really neat thing to think about what America does have if the people and the country work together and stop having your elites with all the money and the big Hollywood smiles trying to control it all. I'll leave you with that. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.